What's up, y'all? My name is Philip Archibald, and pretty much back during COVID, I lost my business, and then ended up like protesting the lockdowns, and wound up in prison, and now I'm out. And I just wanted to start this because I haven't been out, and like things are like a little bit different now, especially like the way that feminism has like really kind of taken over, and I see a lot of guys just kind of like get run over. In fact, this kind of happened to me, like, just getting out. Like, I didn't really know any better, and so I spent like 2 years, like, with somebody who was like really progressive, and it was just constantly just like, it was almost like, like nobody else had ever worked before, right? And as men, we are expected to work. And that was like one thing I really struggled with was this, idea that like, women are victims and like men are oppressing them. And, just as I've been out, I've just like really kind of noticed this attitude that like, men are bad, and, we get shot down all the time, and, crapped on, especially like straight white males. I mean, we're like the most hated people out there right now, y'all. And it just really bothers me, right? So, like, that's why I wanted to start this. Really not to like get anything going, but really just to like vent, because I know like if I feel this way, right, like a lot of other people feel this way. And like I really think that men, we need to really start being men again. Um, there's this big push out there now. Men, they need to talk about their feelings, right? Like I went through a lot of like messed up stuff, guys. Like when I was like 25, my best friend killed himself, right? And he told me about it. It's like I went over there, I tried to save him. I did not get there in time, and I found him like that, right? And that was super traumatic for me, right? And it took me like 6 months, right, of just like not being able to get out of bed. And I like really played into that, and I would always like try and find pity for that, right? But what kind of helped me get back up on my feet actually was like another man. He was like, dude, you are like a disgrace right now to coaching because you're so fat. And he was like, look, you just need to like get back to it. And so that's what I did, right? None of this talking about my feelings. I didn't go to therapy. Not that therapy's bad, right? But like 90% of the time, if you go to therapy, you're going to go to a woman, and she's going to tell you how you're supposed to feel, right? And I just had this discussion with a woman yesterday, right? She was just kind of, well, I took it as she was telling me how to feel. But in the end of the day, guys, like a woman has no business even really having an opinion on how men should feel. If we did that to them, they would fly off the handle at us, dump us, withhold sex from us more than they already do if you're in a relationship or married, right? And that would be that. But for some reason, women feel like they're entitled to tell us how we should think. They want to tell us how we should feel, right? I mean, and I can't tell you, like, and it started with my dad. I watched him, like, he would tell me one thing, right? And then my mom would come back and counter him, and then mysteriously would have the same opinion as my mom. And I guess maybe that's how you're supposed to work through marriage. But, 35 years old, I'm not married. I don't have kids, right? And, I've been watching some of Nick Fuentes lately, and to be honest, like, I think he's got a good point here. Men, like, we don't want to just provide anymore, right? Like, we want to have more meaning because providing used to be appreciated. Now it's like taken for granted, right? If you go out with a feminist woman, she's gonna sit there and brag about how she made 6 figures, right? But when the check comes, she ain't picking that up. You're picking it up, right? You're expected to be the millionaire. You're expected to do all these things, right? But meanwhile, she gets all of the credit, right? She gets all of the attention, all the validation. And you have to sit there in silence and do what must be done because you're a man. And that there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm all for that. However, I'm also for taking that toxic woman out of the equation. Okay? If you're a man that is trying to build something, which is really most of us men, right? Deep down inside, we don't want to be these little beta male simps, right? We want to have something to call our own. We want to be self employed. We want to have businesses. But what happens, right, is we get these toxic women that will like come in and they pull the rugs out from under our feet, right? And there's some great women out there that will build you up. But like, unfortunately, in this day and age, when every woman is empowered and every woman is a feminist and every woman hates men, what they're looking for is they want a simp that's going to build them up. They want a simp that's going to do things for them. And at the end of the day, if something happens to you, they're out. They're a fair weather girlfriend, fair weather wife, what have you. And I think that we need to be on guard against that. And I think that we really need to prioritize building our own castle, right? And so I was talking to this girl about this yesterday. And my thoughts here really are, when I was in my 20s, I had a successful business, right? But like I squandered all of my opportunities on women because I was like, oh, I have money to get women. And so like I had two vehicles because I like wanted women. Like I wanted women to notice me. Like I did all of these things for women to notice me. Like I took steroids so women would notice me, right? Like I did all of these things to like garner the attention of women, and like every ounce of like extra energy that I had that wasn't being spent on my business was going to women, right? Like Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, all of this stuff, right? Like going to the gym, buying gym clothes, like everything in my life was geared towards attracting a mate in my 20s. And then, I ended up going to prison, so like none of that paid off, right? And I think that a lot of young guys fall into that trap. And the consequence is definitely not prison for a lot of people, right? But the consequence might be, a baby mama you really don't care for, right? Like you have like 3 kids out of wedlock, your life is stressful, maybe you have like part-time custody or whatnot, or you get divorced, and that's a whole headache. Bankruptcy, all of these things, because as men, it's like we are motivated to reproduce. And I think that if you really want to be a successful man, and if you actually want to have a happy marriage where, you take on your natural role as a leader and protector and provider, I think that the thing is you have to like skip out on dating for like, the first your 20s, at least like the first 5 years of your 20s, right? Because like you need to put that energy into like building your castle, right? Like I didn't do that, and looking back, like I really shot myself in the foot, and now I'm having to play catch up, and which is unfortunate. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this, because if you're a young guy out there and you feel lonely, and you're kind of falling into this trap of like, oh, you need to have a girlfriend and stuff, like you don't. Okay, what you need to have is money, right? You need to have investments. You need to have an idea that you can sell, right? You need to have a business. You need to have your own finances. You don't even need a nice car, right? Like, don't put your energy into getting attention from women, okay? Because that's what society wants, right? It wants to suck you dry, and then at the end of the day, corporations, whoever you're spending money on, they're benefiting, and you really end up left with nothing. I mean, for some people, getting married young, that like works out great for them. Like it worked out for my parents. I see it work out for some of my cousins. But like nowadays, you're gonna marry somebody if you're in your early 20s, right, that like is probably liberal. They're going to be more feminist thinking, and they're going to run all over you, right? They're going to shoot down everything you do, and they're going to always act like they're the victim of you, and everything's always going to be your fault. And you just don't need that in your life, right? You like don't need to always be defending yourself every time that you have an opinion, right? So my last relationship, it was like every time I had an opinion, it was wrong, or I was negative, or I was just so tiring to be around because, you know, like I'm conservative and I don't like being asked for money from homeless people and all this other stuff, right? It was like, because to me, I'm a realist, right? And that doesn't give me depression or anxiety or anything. I think really more like it helps me cope with life, right? But like for her, that was like running her down because it was like ruining the bubble that she lived in, okay? And that's fine for them, right? But like if you don't think that way, you can't be with somebody who is not a realist, all right? And unfortunately, that's like most women. You know, they want to be like the women that they see on Instagram and on Facebook and YouTube, right? They want to have these perfect lives. They want to have like these perfect bodies. They want to have the perfect gym fit, right? And that involves them thinking a certain way. They want to think everything's happy, right? And everything's not happy. Everything's not fine. And you don't need to be with somebody that doesn't let you speak your mind or have your own thoughts and have your own feelings, right? You can't be with somebody that is always telling you how to think and feel. Like, you really got to run from that and focus on yourself. You know, ultimately, as men, we are literally hardwired to hunt, to protect, to provide, and we need to focus on that. You know, we can't have the first energy of our day be put into, you know, listening to somebody like complain about, you know, their 10 coworkers at work, right? Like, we can't do that, okay? You know, that is extremely bad for us. It steals our energy. You know, we're putting that energy and motivation to protect into listening to drama, and we need to be putting that into growing businesses. Okay, like we need to have something. We need to have something to show for us being alive, right? It's not enough to just like get through and have a job. Like, no man is really happy being an employee, right? Like, I'm an employee right now, and I have another business that I'm growing, and really have two. The other one's kind of smaller, right? But um, it is like so depressing for me to like go into work and have to be told what to do and trade my time for dollars, right? It's much more fulfilling, you know, to sell an idea that I have and replicate that and make money based on that. And that's how we're meant to be. This whole idea of, you know, us being wage slaves, so to speak, right? That didn't really come about to like the industrial era in the early 1900s. And what also happened after the industrial era, well, during it, women got voting rights. They started going to work. So more people had to work, right? It cost more money to live because inflation went up, right? And so with this rise in feminism, you know, you saw a decrease in quality of life. People had to live more. They had to pay for more, right? Because women were working. Now we had to pay for more, you know, dishwashers. We had to pay for laundry machines. All of these things, right? Wages went down because more wages were being paid out. More things were being bought. So the prices of the things that we bought went up. The price of food went up, right? So now that more money's coming in, you know, there has to be an increase in cost, right? And I honestly believe feminism is the whole root of inflation that we have right now. And this has been a thing that's been building up. You know, also, you know, men came up with feminism. Women did not come up with that. Men came up with it so they could get more votes, so corporations could make more money. This has nothing to do with women. At the end of the day, if we wanted to, we could have the voting rights back because we were the ones that gave them in the first place, right? You know, they had to have permission from us to vote, which is really pretty crazy if you think about it, right? And really controversial. But that's okay. It's all right to have opinions. It's all right to talk about them and think about them and just kind of like, wonder about all the little weird conspiracies behind things that happen in the world. And again, that's also why I'm here, just to talk about that stuff and to go off on it and, just kind of like wonder about it. I mean, because I think it's good to like question everything around us, especially things that we take for granted, like even Black Friday. Today is Black Friday, right? Super easy to spend money on Black Friday because since we were kids, we've been programmed watching our parents. Spending money on Black Friday is what you do. I see other business owners, they discount their products. Why? Everybody else discounts their products on Black Friday. Well, what if we did something different and actually raise prices on Black Friday? What if we didn't spend money on Black Friday? What if like all the people who have to go to work at Amazon like went on strike on Black Friday? I mean, that would be amazing. We would totally break these bonds that corporate America has on us and consumers' greed, right? And we could maybe escape the system. But because we are programmed at a young age, right, we just get sucked into this, and we can't get out because it's just too hard, right? The people around us, they don't want us to get out. If we talk about it, we're negative, right? They shame us for that. Just goes back to my point about feminism and the progressive movement. If you question anything, they're going to call you a hater or a doubter. They're just going to be down on you, right? For questioning the system, like you're going to be some kind of weirdo, right? Like being red pilled is weird. If you question anything, it's weird, right? Like, or you're negative, or you're just like this terrible person, or you're a Nazi, or just all these little terms that they come up with for you, just for questioning the way that the system is, right? Or you're sexist. And to be fair, I mean, some of this might be sexist. I mean, there's definitely a lot of things women cannot do that men can do, and vice versa, and for good reason. It's supposed to be like that. And I think that we just need to embrace that. I think men need to embrace their roles and they need to focus on themselves and not be so sidetracked by women and social expectations of them to like spend lots of money on women, especially in the dating process. Like my personal view is like if you don't already like the girl, don't spend money on her, right? Like she does not need your money. Like women have so many men spending money on them, it's not even funny, right? If you come across a woman that gets a lot of male attention, make sure you don't give her any because that is what she thrives on, right? And you're just dumping water into a bucket with a hole in it. Okay, so that is probably like the number one woman that you want to avoid. If you're trying to meet somebody, you definitely want to go for the woman that is like hiding from men. Okay, because those women haven't been run through, right? They probably have the least amount of baggage. They might have some other issues, but I promise you those issues are better than them wanting attention all the time. Okay? And they're probably going to be happy if you just talk to them right and treat them with the respect due to a human being, not just throwing money at them, right? Because ultimately that's what good women want. They want to be treated with respect and love. They don't necessarily want to be showered with gifts. They would rather have your time and your attention and your loyalty. And most good men can give that, especially if they're not, spending all their energy and like sexual resources on trying to get laid all the time. Anyways, so I'm just going to keep this one short because it's just really kind of like an introduction and probably all over the place. But as I go along, I think maybe I will get it down more and I'll probably get some better mics, if this is something I keep doing. But for now, I just wanted to get this recorded and put it up and just kind of like see what kind of feedback, I got. Because just looking around me, it does kind of upset me the way that men get treated, especially straight white men. We get taken for granted, right? And I see a lot of us out there, we just don't know better, because we're raised by our families that, we spend money on women, we spoil women, and yada yada. But the thing is, the chivalric expectations might not have changed, right? But the expectations and requirements for women have changed. You can't be chivalric now and then expect some kind of payout because that's sexist. Okay? And I think that if you can't expect some kind of payout from your chivalric actions or whatever, then you need to take a step back and you really need to like save yourself for the kind of woman that is going to reward your actions. Okay? Because you do not need to be pouring water into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. All right? You need to pour water into a bucket that is going to pour water back into your bucket, and you two become a team and you do life together, right? It needs to be a give. You know, the church has, and by the church I mean like the Protestant church, right? It's really made men weak because they teach us. I grew up Baptist, right? They teach us that everything is on the man. Everything is the man's fault. If somebody cheats, it's the man's fault. If there's a marriage problem, it's the man's fault. Everything falls back on us. There are no expectations of the women, and that has really ruined marriages and relationships in the church and outside of the church, because men have really become simps because they put so much pressure and so much guilt on us for everything. We just don't know what to do anymore. We're scared to turn against that. We don't want to be ridiculed by our friends. We don't want to be ridiculed by our pastors. We don't want to be ridiculed by our significant other, right? We don't want, we bend under the peer pressure and we break. And that is definitely part of the problem. All right, so anyways, guys, keep your heads up. Let's move forward into this next week and let's crush it and be successful. All right, thanks.